Daily news and analysis. We keep you informed and inspired.
This is World Today.
Hello and welcome to World Today. I'm Ding Hen in Beijing. Coming up, President Xi Jinping says China-Turkmenistan cooperation will move ahead with momentum. Tehran intensifies attacks on Gulf energy facilities after Israel hits Iranian gas field. AstraZeneca says it is going to build cell therapy base and innovation center in Shanghai. Rwanda and Congo agree on steps to de-escalate tensions in their Washington meeting. To listen to this episode again or to catch up on our previous episodes, you can download our podcast by searching World Today. First up, Chinese President Xi Jinping says China is ready to discuss cooperation and share development opportunities with Turkmenistan to advance the community with a shared future. He made the remark in a meeting with the Central Asian country's national leader in Beijing. The Chinese leader called on the two sides to accelerate the alignment of the Belt and Road Initiative and Turkmenistan's revival of the Great Silk Road and expand cooperation in areas including natural gas, agricultural, and artificial intelligence. Xi Jinping also called for efforts to tackle terrorism, separatism, and extremism to ensure security for development. He said China stands ready to work with Turkmenistan to practice true multilateralism and reform global governance in the spirit of fairness, justice, openness, and inclusiveness. Gurbanguly Berdimuhamedov said his country is willing to strengthen coordination with China within multilateral frameworks to safeguard peace and stability. So for more, joining us now on the line is Sultan Ali, a China observer and retired Air Force officer in Pakistan. So thank you very much for joining us today, Mr. Sultan Ali. We know in 2013, China and Turkmenistan established a strategic partnership, and then in 2023, the two parties elevated their bilateral ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership. How do you understand this comprehensive strategic partnership, and how would you describe the current momentum in this relationship?
Oh, thank you very much for having me on your show, and this is a very important topic. So I must say that in response to your question, the elevation of China-Turkmenistan ties to a comprehensive strategic partnership in 2013 marked a qualitative leap. A strategic partnership already implied close political trust and cooperation, but the comprehensive dimension broadened the scope because it was now covering energy, trade, infrastructure, culture, and security. Now, this reflects a relationship that is not sectoral, but it is holistic, anchored in mutual respect and Turkmenistan's permanent neutrality. So therefore, I must say that the momentum since then has been steady and multidimensional. Natural gas cooperation obviously remains the backbone, yet both sides are now expanding into non-resource fields like digital economy, clean energy, agriculture, and cultural exchange. And let me tell you and your listeners that this diversification shows that the partnership is dynamic. It is adapting to the new global realities, and it is aligning with China's modernization drive and Turkmenistan's independent development path. Therefore, in a sense, the relationship has moved from transactional to transformational, building a shared future of stability and prosperity.
Talking about alignment, from a development-oriented perspective, Sultan, how do you think China can align the Belt and Road Initiative with Turkmenistan's revival of the Great Silk Road?
Yeah, that's a very relevant question, Ying, because you see, the Belt and Road Initiative and Turkmenistan's revival of the Great Silk Road are naturally complementary. Therefore, the BRI, it provides the infrastructure, financing, and connectivity framework, while on the other hand, Turkmenistan's Silk Road vision It emphasizes its historic role as a bridge between East and West. Therefore, alignment means integrating hard connectivity, pipelines, railways, fiber optic corridors, and with soft connectivity like trade facilitation, cultural exchange, and educational cooperation. And from a development perspective, this synergy allows Turkmenistan to leverage its geographic centrality and energy resources, while China, on the other hand, gains secure access and diversified routes. And together, they transform the ancient pathways into modern corridors of growth, ensuring that the Silk Road is not only a memory of history, but it is a living artery of prosperity and shared future.
In Central Asia, Turkmenistan represents the largest supplier of pipelined natural gas to China. And I guess not so many people are pretty much aware of that very fact. Actually, from the inauguration of the first phase of a pipeline between the two sides in 2009 to 2020, China imported nearly 270 billion cubic meters of natural gas from Turkmenistan. So, what do you make of the prospects for energy cooperation between China and Turkmenistan, including in the field of green energy, renewable energy?
Yeah, you rightly pointed out. I don't think many people are aware of it. But please remember, energy cooperation has been the cornerstone of China-Turkmenistan relations. And with Turkmenistan as China's largest supplier of pipeline natural gas, the figures nearly, because you mentioned 270 billion cubic meters delivered between 2009 and 2020 demonstrate both scale and reliability. Now, looking ahead, the prospect is twofold. First, consolidating and expanding natural gas cooperation to meet China's growing demand, and on the same tone, Turkmenistan's export capacity. Secondly, diversifying into renewables and clean energy. Now, therefore, please be mindful, this dual track reflects a strategic evolution. Natural gas remains the backbone, but renewable energy like solar, wind, and clean technologies, they offer a new frontier. And it aligns with China's modernization drive under its, recently announced 15th five-year plan and Turkmenistan's independent development path. In essence, we have learned from the ongoing crisis in the Gulf that energy cooperation is shifting from a single resource dependency to a comprehensive energy partnership, ensuring sustainability, resilience, and shared prosperity.
The discussion of energy cooperation, energy partnership between China and Turkmenistan appears to be a timely topic for discussion, given the ongoing U.S.-Israel war against Iran and its, spillover effects. We know Turkmenistan is internationally recognized as a permanently neutral country. So, what could be the common ground between China and Turkmenistan regarding the current situation in the Middle East?
Well, I'm glad you asked this question, Ting Heng, because Turkmenistan's permanent neutrality and China's commitment to multilateralism, they both provide a strong common ground in approaching the Middle East crisis, which of course is very worrisome for not only the region, but for the entire world. But here we see that both countries, they reject unilateralism and they emphasize dialogue, diplomacy, and respect for sovereignty, which is extremely important. Therefore, in the face of instability caused by the US-Israel war against Iran and its spillover effects, neutrality and multilateralism, they both converge because Turkmenistan offers a stabilizing posture, while China advocates fairness and inclusiveness in global governance. And together, they stand for de-escalation, peaceful resolution, and safeguarding energy security. And this shared position, it underscores that their partnership is not only bilateral, but it is also a voice, and a very strong voice, for stability in wider regional and global affairs.
Turkmenistan is not an official member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but as far as I know, it often participates actually in SCO meetings as an honored guest, not as an observer, but as an honored guest. So when it comes to cracking down on terrorism, separatism, and extremism, the so-called three evil forces, which we know is a key mission of the SCO, how can China and Turkmenistan deepen their cooperation?
Again, you see, you have touched a very important aspect. Now, please remember, although Turkmenistan is not a formal member of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, but its active participation as an honored guest, it reflects shared priorities with China. And the SCO's mission to combat terrorism, separatism, and extremism, it aligns closely with Turkmenistan's policy of permanent neutrality and China's emphasis on collective security. Therefore, deepening cooperation can take several forms: intelligence sharing, joint training programs, and coordinated border security measures. And equally important is collaboration in addressing the root causes of extremism through economic development, cultural exchange, and educational initiatives. And in this way, China and Turkmenistan, they can reinforce regional stability, demonstrating that neutrality and partnerships are not contradictory, but they are complementary in building a secure and peaceful Central Asia. Therefore, if you permit, I will add that China and Turkmenistan, they stand as trusted partners, bound by respect for sovereignty and Turkmenistan's permanent neutrality. And their cooperation extends from natural gas pipelines to new frontiers in digital economy and clean energy. And together, they uphold fairness and inclusiveness in global governance while building cultural bridges between the peoples of both the nations. And this partnership is not only about today's prosperity, but in my opinion, it is about shaping a shared future of stability, trust, and mutual progress.
Okay, so from your own country's perspective, in what ways do you think the cooperation between China and Turkmenistan, and in a larger picture sense, the cooperation between China and Central Asia might benefit Pakistan?
Well, we are looking at it very closely, and you must have judged that from my response. And we take it as a role model of how relationships should develop. And we should all be concerned about peace, about development, and about a shared future for humankind, as President Xi Jinping has been highlighting now and again.
Thank you very much for joining us. Sultan Ali, a China observer and retired Air Force officer, joining us from Pakistan. You are listening to World Today. I'm Ding Hen in Beijing. Qatar says Iranian missile attacks on the country's main gas facility have caused significant damage. This came hours after Iran threatened to attack energy facilities across the Gulf region in retaliation for an Israeli attack on the country's South Pars gas field. So for more on this, my colleague Xu Yawen earlier spoke with Professor Wang Jing from Northwest University in Xi'an, China.
Professor Wang, Israel's strike on Iran's South Pars gas field marks the first time Iran's upstream oil and gas facilities have been targeted since the outbreak of this conflict. Some observers say the attack has crossed a red line. What's your take on this? How has Israel's strike on Iran's largest gas field escalated the conflict in the Middle East?
I think it's a very dangerous action because on the one hand, we look at what happened during the past more than 2 weeks. The methods of the attacks, I mean, both by the attacks of United States and Israel against targets inside Iran, or by the Iran counterattacks towards the targets inside Israel or other military bases in the Middle East. Actually, their targets that they attack were concentrating on the military political figures or other targets with military and political importance. But the problem right now is that they are starting to target the civilian targets, particularly if we look at the parts gas field is the largest gas field. And also, we cannot forget that inside Iran, the gas is a major source for the electricity generation. So it means that they are actually targeting the infrastructure system. So that's why it suggested a very escalation of the war, and also it suggested a very expansion of the warfare. And so that's why I think that finally would lead to the further escalation of counterattacks by Iran. And also then it will endanger everybody. So nobody will be safe in this region.
U.S. media outlets has reported that Israeli officials said the strike was coordinated with and approved by the Trump administration. And also a U.S. defense official has confirmed that. Yet President Donald Trump says the U.S. did not know about Israel's attack on Iran's gas field. So how do you view these contradictory statements from the U.S.?
I don't think the United States really approved or really acknowledged this attack, because even inside the United States, there are different levels of decision makers. There are different levels of bureaucratic system. So even one official inside the United States approved or maybe acknowledged this attack. Maybe I don't think that Donald Trump or maybe his higher level decision makers will know that. We have to know this attack was launched actually majorly by Israel against the gas field inside Iran. I think this suggests a very division between the United States and Israel over the future of the war. From Israel's perspective, they believe that the further expansion of the war, the further escalation of the war would benefit Israel's own interests. But from United States perspective, they hope to further impose new pressure towards Iran, and their final goal would be to force Iran to accept the terms imposed by United States. Well, from the interest of Israel, what they want is that United States and Israel work together to give the ultimate blow to Iran, to destroy their political system, to destroy their political and decision makers, and to even collapse their government and regime. So they have different goals. So that's why I think for Israel, they hope to attack more and more targets inside Iran without any limitation. But maybe from the United States, on the one hand, of course, they continue their attacks. But on the other hand, they don't want this kind of the war to be further escalated to the extent that they will not control.
Well, then, in your view, how much influence does Israel have on the United States when it comes to the decision to go to the war with Iran, and what kind of next steps that they are going to take?
I think these would be very different. I think they have different plans. As we always stress that the United States, they have to, on the one hand, watching the war and watching their war partner, of course, Israel. But also, meanwhile, the United States cannot forget the aspirations of its allies in the region, particularly the Gulf Arab states. I mean, the Saudi Arabia, the Emirates, the Bahrain, and other regional allies. These allies are very important to the United States' regional interests. So when the war continues, the United States also have to watch very closely about the possible escalation of the war that finally leads to these protests of the regional countries, because these regional allies are very important to the United States' regional interests. And also, the United States has to face the possible challenges by the rising energy prices that could lead to the further growing of the consumption of pressure towards not only the United States' own market, but also to the global economic market. So that's why although the United States and Israel, they are allies in this war, but they have different views. They have different levels of understandings of the war. So that's why I think Israel hopes to continue the war to the largest extent of blowing Iran, to weakening Iran's military capabilities and to weakening Iran's nuclear capabilities and shaken Iran's political system. But from the United States, I think they hope to just give new pressure by the war to force Iran to accept the terms by the United States. So I think that's why they have different understandings, different views. This could not be ignored.
Professor, President Trump has warned Iran that he will blow up the South Pars gas field if Iran continues attacks on Qatar, and says Israel will not be attacking the Iranian energy site again. Do you think Iran will trust what Trump says and believe Israel would actually cease fire?
I think, of course, nobody will take it seriously, because from Iran's perspective, the war is still going on, and the war is now at the very verge of escalation, further escalation. So that's why Iran maintains its high importance for them to give the tit-for-tat logic of the war. So once now we know that their South Pars gas field has been attacked, and Iran will, of course, launch new attacks against the gas fields in other parts of the region, particularly to the gas fields, attack the gas fields with the close interest of United States, regional companies and regional investments. But maybe from Israel, that the United States believe that Israel will listen to or follow some words and suggestions of United States over the how to deploy the next stage of the movement, next stage of activities in the warfare. But I don't think Israel will follow every words or every plan that United States transfer. So that's why we are entering kind of the important strategic moment that nobody could decide what will happen next. Iran has been angered, and they will counterattack very aggressively.
Another thing, Professor Wang, in retaliation for Israeli strike on its South Pars gas field, Iran has attacked Qatar and Saudi Arabia, some oil and gas facilities. What possible steps might Gulf states take next? Because we know they feel pressure to respond to Iran's military action. But on the other hand, they're kind of worried that if they do enter the war with Iran, what's to stop President Trump from leaving tomorrow and declaring American victory and leaving those states to fight the neighbor alone?
I don't think the Gulf states they could do something more because they are also facing the kind of dilemma. As you mentioned, on the one hand, at the very beginning, they don't agree with United States military attacks against Iran. But also, on the other hand, with when the war started, Iran's counterattack actually make themselves suffer from the war. So they have to find a kind of a solution. And actually, let's be frank, during the past several days, I think several things very clear has been suggested that the changes of the regional Gulf Arab states over the ongoing war, because some countries has already adopted the very defensive measures. For example, intercepted the drones and the missiles launched by Iran against the targets inside their own territories. And maybe some other countries started to talk with Israel or United States to force them to attack further more military presence inside Iran. So that's why I think this would suggest a very major transformation of the stances for the Gulf Arab states. With the war goes by, maybe their stances will transform from the very sympathized Iran towards a kind of the hostilities towards Iran. So that depends on how Iran will react and how Iran will counterattack. So that's why I think the next maybe few days will be very crucial for the future of the war.
And lastly, Professor, it's reported that Ali Larijani, Iran's top security official, has been killed in an Israeli strike. An Israeli defense minister has said that he and Prime Minister Netanyahu have jointly authorized the Israeli military to target and kill any Iranian official without prior approval. What are your thoughts on this, and how will Israel's action make this conflict even harder to end?
I think because now the war entering a new stage, because Israel, on the one hand, we know that they attacked the gas field and energy facilities inside Iran. Also, on the other hand, after the war, they continue their attacks against the important political figures, important military figures inside Iran without any warning or without any approval of the international community. So that's why it is very dangerous for the war, because the war might further face the escalation of tension, the further escalation of the intensity. So it's a direct violation of the international law, because Iran is still the legal member of the United Nations, and its leaders, including the former supreme leader Ali Khamenei, or the just killed the important leader of Ali Larijani. They were both very important leaders inside Iran, and there is a political privilege should also be respected by every international community, including Israel. But I think when the war started, it's always easy to start a new stage, but it will always be difficult. It always be difficult to end the war, even to downplay the kind of the intensity or downplay the hostility. So that's why I think now the war is facing the kind of the escalation circle. That's why I think Israel, or maybe United States, or maybe Iran themselves should reconsider how to manage the escalation crisis. And because if the crisis further escalated, everybody will be in danger.
Professor Wang Jing from Northwest University in Xi'an, China, talking with my colleague Xu Yawen. You're listening to World Today. We'll be back after a short break. You are listening to World Today. I'm Ding Hen in Beijing. The Chinese mainland has pledged to roll out measures to facilitate cross-strait exchanges and cooperation over the next 5 years. A spokesperson for the State Council Taiwan Affairs Office made a remark on Wednesday, saying that the promotion of peaceful development of cross-strait ties and national reunification are the goals of China's 15th five-year plan. He vowed that the Chinese mainland would adhere to the One China principle and the 1992 consensus, crack down upon Taiwan independent separatist forces, and oppose any form of foreign interference on the Taiwan question. So joining us now on the line is Dr. Rong Ying, Chair Professor at the School of International Studies, Sichuan University. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so judging from the official statements on the part of mainland officials and authorities, it seems cross-strait economic cooperation and economic integration will be a key focus, will be a focal point during China's 15th five-year plan to 2030. So what do you make of the opportunities that the Chinese mainland is going to offer to Taiwan compatriots, in particular Taiwan businesses, during this period?
Well, I think the next 5 years, the time for the 15th five-year plan, is going to be really the great opportunities, great time for Taiwanese enterprises and also Taiwanese compatriots from Taiwan to develop themselves, to pursue their business, and working together with the mainland to enjoy, I think, the benefits, the development, and opportunities for China's development, particularly the socialist modernization. This is largely because of the time framework. The next 5 years are going to be very important in terms of implementing the strategy of building China into a developed economies, developed countries. So because of that, you have seen that the 15th five-year plan has bring strategies and the blueprint for transition from the domestic focusing more on domestic consumptions and also development of high quality sort of productive forces. All these, I think, plans are going, when implemented, are going to provide many opportunities, great opportunities for Taiwan. Enterprises and compatriots from Taiwan to enjoy the opportunity to develop themselves.
Now, some say industries such as artificial intelligence, semiconductors, healthcare, and electric vehicles are some of the most promising fields for cross-strait cooperation over the next 5 years. What is your take on this?
Yeah, it is true. I think these industries, which I think Taiwanese enterprises have quite strong advantages, definitely are going to enjoy because the huge opportunities, the great potentials of market, and I think the fact that China itself provides such a big market. But having said that, I think that also even the traditional sort of industries would also enjoy opportunities, as I think China is huge. The market is huge, potential is great, and they can also, in the process, of upgrading or adapting, the new changes for this traditional industry. And lastly, I think the emerging industries, as we're talking about, you can also enjoy great potentialities for development as the mainland industries and science and technologies, new, ecosystems all provide great opportunities. That's why I thought that indeed, looking ahead the next 5 years, the 15th five-year plan is going to be really critical and important areas, even, opportunities and time, even for Taiwanese economy's own upgrading and development.
Yeah. Talking about Taiwan's economy, I think it's pretty interesting to note here that this mainland spokesperson on Wednesday said that the Chinese mainland is ready to provide Taiwan compatriots with stable and reliable energy supplies once peaceful reunification is complete. We know currently the public in Taiwan is watching the ongoing war in Iran with a sense of fear over the potential impact on the island's economy. And actually, Taiwan authorities have already activated a so-called energy response mechanism to try to coordinate energy supply sources because of the conflict in the Middle East. So with that in mind, Dr. Rong, do you think it is the case that the more international turbulence and instability we see, the more necessary it is for Taiwan to integrate with the mainland?
Yeah, that's exactly the reason why I think the core goals that the mainland develops, both in terms of comprehensive and sort of national powers, look at the diplomacy, national defense, and everything. We have seen that over the past sort of decades and years, all in similar international contingencies or conflicts, we have seen that the Taiwanese compatriots has been evacuated together with the mainland people because of the diplomacy, diplomatic work. And I think we have seen, we talked about economic opportunities provided by the mainland development. But now I think as ongoing conflict in the Middle East has shown, energy security, resource security are all, another important area where I think the Taiwanese can count on as the Chinese mainland develops. And I think this is a special and telling example that because of that, I think working together with mainland would not only, I think, in terms of you look at this special case of energy security, would provide cheaper, cleaner, reliable energies to reduce the burdens of the Taiwanese entrepreneurs. And so one more examples of unification with mainland Taiwanese and would enjoy more and better and safer life. That's exactly the reason why I think the unification is now having more better and greater resonance in Taiwan. That is the reason.
Yeah.
Very clear.
What do you make of the challenges and complexities, even in terms of China's mission to, on one hand, try to promote cross-strait integration and cooperation, while on the other hand, to formally, curb Taiwan independent separatist forces?
I think it's also been very clear for the strategy laid out by the party on the question of Taiwan, I think, which is basically two pillars supported, right? On the one hand, the integration, economic integration, cross-strait sort of development. On the other hand, peace and stability across the strait, which very much related to the very issue, the challenges by the surging or the development of Taiwan independent forces and its external, supporters. So that's why I think while the 15th five-year plan emphasized very much on economic integration across strait, it has also made very clear that the importance of continuously resolutely opposing the Taiwan independent separatist independent forces. And so it's a question of coordination. But I think without peace and stability across strait, in other words, it would be obliged and imperative to oppose and in a resolute way the Taiwan independent forces so that the economic integration, the development, the opportunities provide Chinese mainland development, diplomatically and others, economically in particular, can be enjoyed. Without that, it is not impossible.
Yeah. Thank you very much for joining us. Dr. Rong Ying, Chair Professor at the School of International Studies, Sichuan University. This is World Today. We'll be back.
Welcome. I am Chu Zhang, Deputy Director at the Center for Middle Eastern Studies at Fudan University. On the World Today program, we will dive beyond the headlines to uncover the stories, trends, and impacts that connect states across the globe. Join me on World Today.
You're back with World Today. I'm Ding Hen in Beijing. AstraZeneca is expanding its footprint and presence in China. The company has unveiled plans to build a cell therapy manufacturing and a supply base along with an innovation center in Shanghai. The facility is going to focus on producing and supplying CAR T cell therapies for China and other Asian markets. The project is part of the company's broader plan to invest $15 billion in China through the year 2030, expanding its medicine manufacturing and research and development capabilities. The British drug maker aims to become the first global firm that is able to independently develop, produce, and deliver cell therapies in China. For more on this, my colleague Do Hongyu spoke with Liu Baochen, Director of the Center for International Business Ethics with the University of International Business and Economics.
Professor, AstraZeneca wants to become the first multinational in China with end-to-end cell therapy capabilities. Why has it chosen Shanghai as the base to pursue this ambition?
First, China has opened the specific sectors like the biotechnology with pharmaceutical and also the hospitals to the outside world for participation. And Shanghai is definitely a leading entry point for multinational companies in this particular industry because of its unique combination of regulatory efficiency, industrial ecosystem, and globalized talent pool. So this Shanghai, in this sense, is difficult to replicate elsewhere in China or even in the rest of part of the Asia. So from a policy and regulatory perspective, Shanghai, especially the Shanghai Free Trade Zone, has been at the forefront of a clinical trial reform with accelerated approval system. A number of pioneer policies are there to advance the biotech therapies, such as cell and genetic therapies. So this really reduces the time to market for high complex treatments like what AstraZeneca can offer. So, and also Shanghai has a whole cluster of dense biopharma innovation centers. So with leading hospitals and clinical trial centers, with the contract developments that's there to manufacture organic stuff, and a deeper talent pool, as I said, with scientists, with clinicians, and also with marketing the teams. So this is there to provide the Shanghai with a unique position as a global gateway, not only to domestic market in China, but also to the entire world, because medicine is really something that is logistically more viable and low cost. So this is there to occupy a strategic position in the supply chain of this particular industry.
Quite unique advantages. And not just AstraZeneca. In recent years, global pharmaceutical giants such as Roche, Daiichi Sankyo, and Bayer have expanded their investment in China. What has driven them to do so?
Well, I can identify three structural drivers in this industry. One is the market scale and demand upgradation. China is now one of the largest and fast-growing pharmaceutical markets on a global basis, driven by China's aging population, rising income, and also, with more of the chronic diseases that we are facing in terms of the tumor, in terms of the cancer, in terms of the asthma, etc. So this really requires more of the innovative therapies that multinational pharmaceutical firms can really take advantage of. So more importantly, the demand is really shifting from generics now to more of the innovative biodrugs and precision medicine. And of course, also with the support of digital, the platform, so they can really leverage, China on a global basis to reshape their global supply chain at a more cost-effective way.
Professor, as biomedicine becomes an emerging pillar industry in China, how could rising foreign investment help accelerate the sector's development?
Well, actually, I was once leading a U.S. biopharm to be in China in the biomedical research and manufacture. So what we noticed that there are strategic complementary between the global multinational firms with Chinese particular industry. China has strategic advantage in building skills in rolling out massive clinical trials with huge experience and also with very sophisticated the distribution network, while the global pharmaceutical companies, they offer still the advanced technologies, for example, in the biotech industry, the amidation, the purification, and the strategic enzymes that are still in the missing for China, not to mention all the fermentation process, etc. So the other issue is that the global firms can bring more demanding standards in terms of the GLP, which stands for the good clinical trial practices, and the GMP facilities, the good manufacturing practices, and more of the compliance and quality control that can help to synergize with the Chinese advantages. So this can really also align more closely with the China's the pharmaceutical reform and hospital the prescriptions. So this can really enhance the credibility, but also to grow with China's brand. So such a sort of ecosystem is there to foster the collaboration between local biofirms, hospitals, research organizations, and even academic teaching. So that's quite a sort of win-win situation based on such sort of synergy.
And now global pharmaceutical giants are not only connecting with Chinese domestic firms, but also considering investing in China as a way to connect with the world. For instance, AstraZeneca CEO Pascal Soriot said that investing for patients in China is also investing in innovation, manufacturing, and the export of these medicines to the rest of the world. What's your take on this, and how should we understand the link between China's healthcare market and global pharmaceutical innovation?
The health issue is a global one. So therefore, by the verification within China, because China operates something that is similar in regulation and approval process that is comparable with the FDA in the United States and EMEA in Europe. So therefore, what is really developed based on the Chinese advantage in clinical trial, in manufacture, and also the greater connectivity with the rest of the world, they can really take China as a hub for global distribution, and they can also build strategic alliance so that they can really spread along the entire invention chain in terms of the discovery, in terms of the clinical trial, in terms of the pilot manufacture. So that's a very sensible and also competitive choice for multinational companies to operate in China and work with China, service China, but also spanning around the world.
Professor Liu Baochen, Director of the Center for International Business Ethics with the University of International Business and Economics, speaking with my colleague Dou Hongyu. This is World Today. Stay tuned. You're listening to World Today. I'm Ding Hen in Beijing. The Democratic Republic of Congo, or the DRC, and Rwanda have held 2 days of talks in Washington on the peace process in eastern Congo. It was the first encounter between the parties since the United States slapped sanctions on the Rwanda Defense Force and a few senior officials earlier this month. A joint statement says the DRC and Rwanda agreed to a series of coordinated measures to de-escalate tensions and advance progress on the ground. The U.S. and the DRC have blamed Rwanda's support for the M23 rebel group for the continued violence in eastern Congo. Rwanda, for its part, denies that very allegation. So for more, joining us now on the line is Dr. He Wenping, Africa expert and a senior research fellow with the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. Thank you very much for joining us.
Hello, Ding Han. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, how would you assess the latest development we're talking about here, this meeting in Washington? Does it mark a step closer to peace in eastern Congo? Actually, we know the two parties signed a peace deal in Washington, D.C. in December last year. However, just days after that, M23 rebels entered a city in eastern Congo near the border with Burundi, arguably in the war's biggest escalation in several months. That was in December. So why do you think the deal signed in December didn't work?
Well, actually, of course, the recent talk saying now new agreement has been reached, I think, of course, this should be a good thing. Also, I agree it marks a step closer to peace in this, conflicting zone in eastern Congo. The reason the peace deal has been signed at the end of last year and then, a step back and then maybe one step forward and another 2 steps back. So always this, back and forth, because the fundamental, those root causes hasn't been resolved just by those United States step in. They think, wow, with the White House stepping in, everything will be okay. Actually, it's not that easy because those conflicting has been existing there for as long as even 30 years after the end of Rwanda genocide in the year 1994. And all those conflicting things already spill over, go beyond this border in Rwanda, either in DRC, even now seems spill over to Burundi as well. So it's not that easy. Ethnic conflict and then resources, those, scrambling for resources, given now the more importance from those strategic resources in that area. So those conflicting even going, more serious than before.
So in other words, this is a war occurring on the ethnical or racial line, right? If we think about the aftermath of the Rwanda genocide in the 1990s. Now, since you talk about Burundi, Professor He, some say M23 rebels' continued presence near Burundi's border carries the risk of escalating this particular conflict into a broader regional, war. Is this a legitimate concern?
Oh, yes, of course. we should take this as an early warning for this this conflict going even further away, go beyond those original area, because those if we look about the map in the center of the Africa continent, you will see this area, DRC and Burundi and Rwanda. Even you can go further to Uganda, even south of Sudan. So this South Sudan, so this area being regarded as the heart of Africa, and also in the 1990s, also coming up with the first called World War in Africa. Africa's big war involved into even Namibia, Zimbabwe, as total as 9 countries. So those deep-rooted, those conflicting things, even far earlier in 1990. So up to now, if root causes cannot be resolved, it's another danger for this conflict being escalated, rather than saying, wow, once the deal has been signed, everything is okay.
Now, although on the surface it seems to be a separate issue, but I guess we have to think about the ongoing Iran war, the ongoing conflict in the Middle East. I mean, the United States launched airstrikes on Iran, on Tehran, when active negotiations between the two sides were still going on. So do you think such a behavior has eroded Washington's capability and, more importantly, credibility when it is trying to mediate in other conflicts, such as the one in Eastern Congo?
Yeah, of course. Donald Trump even said, I made 9 conflicts in the world, has been totally come to the end in the year 2025. Actually, it's very ironically because he made the war to Iran, and even in January also taken away Venezuela's sitting presidents. So all this already make the White House credibility now no longer there. For example, even the Times Magazine in the U.S. published a new issue, come up with those MAGA movement, those Donald Trump always put on his hat, this red hat cap, and then saying, war on Nigeria, war on Iran, and war Venezuela, war here. So plus all together also more than 7 now. So you see, when the negotiations still are on the way with the Iran, and then suddenly the bombing to this country together, White House together with the Israel, Netanyahu and Donald Trump now, they becoming hand in hand, made the war on Iran. So how come this kind of credit now you are saying, wow, we trust more about White House? Donald Trump's words can be trusted. So of course, that will make those credibility in the White House actually has been eroded rather than being built on and strengthened their credibility.
Thank you very much for joining us. He Wenping, Africa expert and a senior research fellow with the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. That's all the time for this edition of World Today. I'm Ding He in Beijing. Thank you so much for listening. Bye for now.